You know I've been around and doing it, but now it's my time to shine and start proving it. I'm losing it, I'm moving it. The city is where I'm made, Bostonian flow, I kick it a back day. Yeah, I got game, God in a fan way. We the city of the champs, every sport we play. Spit wetter than the harbor, yeah, I'm flowing like the Charles. I be speeding on this beat, call it Turnpike Miles. Yeah, it's Google signing on, John to the Hancock, and I'm always key, I'm ready to unlock. I be doing big things.
Welcome back, everyone, to the newest edition of Once a Week. I'm Billy Gianlutis, and guys, we are continuing our string of special guest interviews, bringing you impactful messages to what has helped them find the most success out of their goals, but also out of their own self-improvement. And today we have a guest that you might have seen before, as last year he brought some great messages to us, but now he is on to new endeavors to help others through deeper coaching. And we want to dive into so many of these great areas for you today to help you. But guys, I give you Chris Kraft, and I hope you have checked out our other videos, guys, because today we got something great in store. But Chris, welcome back, and I thank you so much for being here.
Billy, it's always one of my favorite times, man, that we can sit here and have this conversation. I love the conversation we always hit before we hit record. We always have a great, honest conversation about what to talk about. And really, when it comes to it, when you find two people that are on the same wavelength, when it comes to thinking alike, you got to make sure you hang out with those people consistently, right? So I appreciate you having me back. It's my pleasure for sure.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And the beauty of that is now you've stepped into another coaching area. Like I've been coaching for a while now, but now you're full-fledged into Bloodflow Coaching. But tell us a little bit about this, why you stepped into coaching. And if you want, tell us the foundations of how you help people through your own coaching approach right now.
Would love to, man. Well, first of all, I want to thank you, because it's very rare to find somebody who's willing to give their own time, their own podcast, their own spotlight, in a sense, to spotlight somebody else. So I definitely appreciate that. Bloodflow Coaching was born from my gray hair. And it's funny that I had somebody told me one time, they said, you need to market your gray hair. And I started taking offense to that. And they said, no, Chris, it's because you've been coaching for 15 almost 20 years. So I've been coaching for nonprofits, for recovery communities, people who their lives have collapsed and they're helping get their lives back together. I've been doing that on a volunteer basis for well over a decade now. My wife and I have been youth pastors in churches. We've been mentors and coaches. So basically what I decided last year when corporate America decided that, hey, it's a great time to go look for a job, and then people wouldn't accept you because you were overqualified, I decided to prove them right. And I bet on myself. I turned 40 last year. And I thought, instead of having, so many people don't know where their lives are going. So the midlife crisis becomes oh no, what have I done? Where am I going? I know exactly where I'm supposed to go. I'm supposed to help individuals and businesses get from point A to point B. But instead of doing it from a volunteer basis, now I'm deciding to do it for full time. So this is what I do. The idea of blood flow coaching is in the physical body, anything that does not receive the appropriate blood flow dies. And in our lives, that same exact thing happens. If we don't have the right information or the right tools for our marriage, it dies. If we don't have the right information or tools for our finances, it dies. And it creates stress and frustration and anxiety. So as a coach, one of the things that Billy and I can both do is to come alongside you and help you get the blood flow going back into your life. What's missing? So I appreciate you letting me share that. But the foundations, I love that question, because if I'm going to build a building, if I'm going to build a life, if I'm going to build a marriage, if I'm going to build a spiritual life on something, the foundation has to be right. Right. So when Billy asked me previously, he said, Chris, what's the foundations of your coaching? I said, I can get really passionate about this, so I'll try to keep my voice down, because probably my wife's somewhere going, Chris, I'm trying to do something, right? The foundation of my coaching is really two things. First of all is principle-based information. I think we would all agree today that information is not lacking, but the right information is sorely missed. You see, traditional education left gaps. I think we'd all agree traditional education really doesn't train us well for life. It may train us in algebra, a little bit of history, a little bit of economics when it comes to here's how to write a check and do your taxes. But why do so many of us struggle in relationships, in marriage, in finances? Because we're not adequately prepared. We might have gotten some information, but if it's not getting us the results we want, it's the wrong information.
Right.
And also it has to be based on something that matters. It's perfectly fine getting someone's opinion, but does that person have the results you're looking for?
Right. I get that.
Excuse me, my coffee when I coach. I got to make sure I have coffee going. And all of a sudden, I get my excitement going, and then I go, "Whoa, I need to pause." Principle-based information means this: the information I'm basing my life on, has somebody used it before to get the results I'm looking for?
Right.
The principle of sowing and reaping, whatever I put into my mind is the results I'm going to get. There's principles out there. If I hold a remote control above my head and drop it, the principle of gravity takes over. I don't get to choose whether or not this falls. The principle takes over and rules the consequences. So when I coach, one of the foundations that I use is let's focus on principle-based information through reading books, through listening to audios, through associating with people who have the results I'm looking for. So that's one phase. The other part of the foundation is solution-focused tools. And I would really encourage you, go back and watch the talk that Billy and I had about the toolbox, right? Because everybody has a mental toolbox. And when they face a situation in life, hey, I've got a career change. Hey, I've been let go from my job. I'm facing marriage problems. When I open my toolbox to fix that problem, what tools do I have? What information do I have? Have I read a book that covers this? Do I have a principle that I can pull out and use, and not a fist like a punch? Do I have a tool that I can pull out and use to solve this problem? Not being problem focused, being solution focused. So those two aspects of that foundation is what I teach. And you and I have done talks on the two circles. There's all these great principles out there, but the question is not, and I read this the other day, they said, personal development, if you're not careful, can become the new version of procrastination.
100%. I agree.
And here's what that means. It's great to hire a coach like Billy. You bring him in, Billy's got the results. He's got the fruit on the tree that he knows how to get someone go from point A to point B. You can be with Billy for a solid year doing coaching, but if you're not applying the principles and the tools that he hands you, your life's not going to change. You're not going to get the results you want. So the foundation's important, but then taking the next step is really important. Billy, I'd love to hear your thoughts. This is not my podcast, but I'd really like to hear your thoughts. What are some of the foundations that you see? Because you've been doing this professionally longer than I have. So what do you consider as some of your foundations when you're coaching?
I agree with a lot of what you said, especially principle-based information. And before we started recording and we were having that conversation, you said one quick line that stuck out so powerfully to me, in the sense that today in school, in this day and age in school, there's so much information flooding everyone. But I think any person listening, viewing this right now, heck, either one of us, there's a lot of information that gets thrown out the window that you will never touch again. And I didn't become a mathematician. The amount of math that I use consists of a calculator now. Yes, I can go back and do long division. I can do multiplication. That's still in here, but I'm not using it. Or the history lessons that I learned back in the day. It's great to learn it in the moment for a kid or a teenager growing and going through high school. However, nowadays, and I noticed this firsthand when I was in high school, when you started to ask the questions of, well, when am I going to use this again? I literally went up to a teacher and asked in math, and she wasn't a big fan of the question. I asked her straight up, hey, when am I going to use this formula after high school or in college? Well, if you become an architect, you're going to use this. I'm like, I've never really wanted to be an architect. Why? I've never wanted to see this future. Some kid might wholeheartedly. That's phenomenal. But if we're not actually teaching the information that are going to help kids be able to grow into full-fledged adults, we're leaving a lack. And that's where, that's one of the foundations that comes into my coaching is play. Is like, all right, is there a lack for the result we're trying to get? All right, how can we adjust, as you do with your blood flow coaching? You're trying to bring the circulation back to someone, a circulation in their life. But if there's a wall or there's a lack of information that helps them get around that wall, get over that wall, get through that wall, whatever it looks like, you start to realize, all right, that's the problem we need to address. So if we're addressing that problem, if we're addressing that lack can turn to abundance in the matter of a moment because the right information is provided. So when clients come to me, younger, older, heck, whatever the age is, you start to dive into the aha moments. And the aha moments is when the right information makes the right connection that someone needed in that moment that helps them move forward, goes through that door, goes through to the result they're looking for. So I completely get behind you on principle-based information for coaching, because A coach, I think you even said this yourself, a coach is not therapy wholeheartedly. It's a form of support and help, just as therapy is, but therapy focuses on the past, coaching focuses on the future, right? And I love that diagram of it. And the beauty of being a coach is you're helping someone create and walk into their future in the present moment. So you're in the middle, who's then helping the client, the person, whoever it is, take the steps necessary to create their best future, which then impacts us as the coach, because we help someone create their best future, which then in turn creates our great moment in the present as we walk into our great future. So it's a win-win, which we're going to get into in a second. It's a win-win for everyone in that process. But other foundational points in my coaching, people have heard it here before on once a week and whatnot. I love focusing on the trifecta, where every single day we are moving forward towards some goal. And that could be someone waking up and just they might not do anything. Okay, well, if you set a goal for yourself, you're going to move forward. But the 3 areas of goals that we set for ourselves, your mindset, your mind goal, your physical goal, and your spiritual goal. So the trifecta, just as we know, mind, body, and spirit, as they always say. I started to notice, which is why my coaching has moved forward in this. If we're all trying to coach, or we're all trying to become the best individual we can be, we want to live the best life, live life on our own terms. What does that mean? And are you truly living an all-encompassing life on your own terms? Because I always use the bodybuilder as the example, where if a bodybuilder is going to the gym, and there's some very, very intelligent bodybuilders out there, from kids younger than me, they get into weightlifting, they get into fitness, they get everything like that, where they go to the gym, they try and work out all their problems, they try and push all their mental anger onto the weights. And you can get a result from it. But to me, that shows a lack in the mindset piece and the mental health piece, right? So we can go full-fledged at a physical goal, but you have these other areas of this trifecta, this triangle, that you need to give time to during your day to then start to see the all-encompassing life grow. Because if I can go to the gym every hour of the week, I will see an impact on my physical side, my body side, but am I truly giving the time to my mental side and my spiritual side? And I get clients coming through, they're not spiritual. No worries at all. But what do you focus on for your physical goal and your mental goal? And then eventually, when you start to pursue this progress for yourself, you start to realize it all connects together. All connects together, connects you to a spiritual truth that's behind that. You don't have to be faithful at all. You don't have to even step foot in that. But when you start to realize how powerful your mind is and your body is, there's something else there. There's an energy there, aka spiritual. And my foundational focus of my coaching has now become, if we can set a goal into every one of these areas, and then you start to take steps into all these areas on a daily basis, weekly basis, whatever it looks like, you start to see every single area of yourself and your life improve, because you're now in control. Because you're no longer letting everything outside of yourself dictate where your life goes. Like a schedule can't dictate you. You have to dictate your schedule. Right. And if you take that power back, there is nothing that a client cannot do. And that's a foundational point of my coaching. But that falls right in line with principle-based information, with solution-focused tools, with providing to people the strengths that they need to achieve the results that they're looking for. That's the beauty of it. But, that connects to our next point, Chris, of a win-win mentality.
It does.
Right? So you dive into that. And obviously we'll keep going on the coaching aspect, but dive into a win-win for everyone.
For sure. And let me throw out a couple things based on what you said, because let me go and ask our listeners one really big thing. I'm going to ask you listeners, how good of a student are you? Because it's really funny when people want to say, all right, I'm going to go do coaching. I want you to notice I have a notebook. I'm a professional coach. I do this for a living, yet I'm sitting here wanting to learn from someone who has the results and the fruit on the tree. I'm going to ask you, do you bring a notebook to places that you're trying to learn from? Are you taking notes? Are you, like, the reason that Billy, I just threw out those phrases to Billy, principle-based information and solution-focused tools. He's spitting them out like he knows them. He just heard them a few minutes ago. Why? He wrote them down because he's a good student. He's learning himself. Emerson said, everyone is my superior in some way. And in that, I can learn from them. The other thing I wanted to throw out is I love what you were saying about the right information. And when it comes to the coaching relationship. So I wrote this note down because this is interesting. It's interesting that we all think we have the right information. The purpose of a coach, I like using the example of a blind spot mirror on a car. I think we've even talked about this before, where I can see a mirror, but everybody has blind spots.
Right.
The reason that you bring a personal coach on to help you is to identify the information pieces that you're missing. Right. So that's the purpose is not bringing somebody smarter in to tell me what I'm doing wrong. It has nothing to do with that. It simply has to do with, and I want you to hear this phrase, it's an uninvolved, unemotional third party. When I come in to coach someone, I'm not their dad. I'm not their brother. I'm not emotionally involved with them. So I can look objectively, not subjectively with emotions and opinions. I can go, here's what I see. Yeah. And there have been many times in my coaching, Billy, I think you'd agree with this, where all I do is I go, hey, did you hear what you just said?
Right.
And they're like, no, I didn't hear myself say that. Like, all I'm doing is shining a light on a blind spot. So realize the reason to bring a personal coach on, whoever that may be. First of all, do a fruit check, make sure they have the results in the area you're looking for, make sure they're being mentored, and make sure they're a good student. And I know that Billy is, so he'd be a great idea for you. But past there, it's the idea of the reason you're bringing them on is to give you the right information to fill the gaps that you're missing, right? So I just wanted to throw that out there. So win-win scenario. What is a win-win scenario? I would really encourage everyone to read the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And it's really interesting when I throw that book out to people. I know Billy knows it and Billy's read it. And there's so many people who say, oh, that's a great book. Did you know that's like the #1 book on the shelves at thrift stores because so many people get rid of it? And I'm like, it's really interesting how everybody agrees it's a great book, yet they don't care if it's in their library. They're not going to read. I'm reading that book every year. I'm teaching something out of that book all the time. Why? Because it has principles in it and information and tools to help us live life. So here's a really big one. And principle number 4 is the idea of think win-win. And here's the idea. I'm going in a few minutes to watch the Alabama basketball team. They're the #1 team in the country. And I know when this comes out, it'll be later on. Hopefully they're still advancing when this video comes out. But I'm going to watch them. In the field of competition, you want a win-lose scenario. You're chasing for the win. And for you to win, the other team has to lose. Nothing wrong with that in the area of competition. When you're on a Peloton bike, there's only one #1, right? Everybody else is chasing you. So the problem is when we take that mentality into our relationships and into our business ventures. Billy was just telling me a minute ago, make sure, by the way, and I'll go ahead and say his thing, click on subscribe. Make sure that you like the video because he's got some other videos coming out of other people that you need to hear their stories. They have inspirational stories. They have different. Now, why? And I want you to think about this. If Billy's a businessman, why did he bring someone else on his podcast, on his show, put his stamp of approval on it, and then let the other person talk about themselves the whole time? Because it's called a win-win. Billy's offering a young man, a young woman, an older person who has experience and has a great story. He's allowing them to share, and it gives a win-win scenario. If we take that win-win scenario into our business, we're going to thrive. Into our marriages, we're going to thrive. The problem, and I'd like you to speak to this, when we start seeing a win-lose, when, like you were talking about a moment ago, when our ego comes up and we're ego-driven, and all of a sudden I need to get something out of this, given in a true win-win, all parties get something.
Right.
And given there are some times to compromise if it's not really that big of a deal. But I think you would agree that one of the issues we see in relationships today is we are constantly on guard against being taken advantage of.
Right.
We're scared that I'm going to lose in this situation. So I love talking to entrepreneurs, and then I'm going to throw this over to you because I encourage win-win. So when it comes to win, let's focus for a second. I'd love you to speak to the win-win aspect when it comes to coaching, and then what you see when it comes to relationships. And then I'll throw out some thoughts about entrepreneurs because that's kind of one of the areas I'm focusing on right now.
Yeah, of course. From a coaching standpoint, I believe no matter who the client is, no matter who the potential client is, it will forever be a win-win situation. Even if that client starts out rocky with trying to connect with the coach, which can happen. Everyone's got a different personality. A client can come in, their emotions could be wherever they are, but there usually are some walls that are up that need to come down, but they got their foot in the door because whatever result, as you mentioned earlier, like, oh, that guy has it. Chris has this result. I got to go to Chris. And they might be a little closed off at first, but it becomes a win-win in the sense that a coach is now providing you information that's going to help you grow. And in my standpoint, no matter who the person is, because I work with all ages, I always believe that I am about to learn from someone new. And I have clients from all different backgrounds. I have clients from all different professions. I have clients from all different ages, all different parts of the world. And I think it's phenomenal. But they bring different experiences to the table. And so if I'm able to provide support to someone else, they don't realize it. And this goes to anyone out there who's thinking of a coach, might be someone with a coach right now. You do not realize how powerful you are and what you're giving off from a positive standpoint in a coaching session. You could be sitting there talking to your coach and you're pouring it out there to them about whatever happened yesterday. And it hits you so hard. And then the coach steps in and he's able to pull you back up to where you need to be and then move forward again. Just your success and your result from absorbing that information pours back into the coach, because the coach is then learning that, all right, this worked for so-and-so, it can work for this person again.
There you go.
This result came after this happened. Patterns happen, habits happen, everything like that. But the joy of being a coach is being able to help someone grow themselves. And then that growth gives back. That's the gratitude aspect, but that's the receiving aspect. That's being able to give and receive back. What comes from a coaching session is not, it doesn't have to be, I'll say this, what comes from a coaching session is not all about a monetary value. And people think, oh, put the money down, yeah, I'll pay him, he's going to give me my time. That's not the case at all. I'm sitting there and like, I've helped people for free. I've helped people in whatever stance, because helping people, why you get into coaching, why you get into a profession that helps other people, is because you receive such an incredible feeling from being able to help someone up, and then 100%. They can walk on their own. 100%. So in a win-win scenario, at the bottom line, it is that if I help someone else, it helps me in such a way. And I think great coaches out there have that as their foundational mentality, where like, hey, I love helping people and I'm going to do that one way or the other, no matter what comes. But exactly. I see that win-win in so many coaching settings. And I agree with you that whether it's a relationship standpoint, a professional standpoint, whatever, win or lose, fear is definitely on everyone's mind now more than ever in the world. And I love what you said, where in a relational standpoint, you mentioned it, where fear steps in and people are like, oh, how am I winning in this situation? Well, if you're leading with fear, you aren't going to win that situation. You could have destroyed the situation because your thoughts are now filled with, oh my goodness, why did they say that? Well, why did they do this? You're no longer focusing on the fact that someone's with you in a relationship right now, walking this life with you, where the love is at the bottom of that. But if your perspective goes from love to fear, and you're now shying away from these life experiences, you're writing your own story in the sense of, oh, hey, this is going to end. And that's tough to say. And, becoming a coach, I've been through those moments where fear leads you in such a way. But if you're going to allow fear to lead you, you're going to be on the wrong end of that win-lose scenario. It's true. Right? That's the competitive aspect of it. But no, Chris, I'll pass it back to you with this win-win aspect, because you find it in every aspect of life. And it's the people that can get together where a win-win happens, where success is going to come to you. It might not be instantaneously, but it will come back to you, because that's the beauty of giving and receiving at the end of the day.
Very true. It should never be expected automatically, because usually I've heard it said that all frustration comes from unmet expectations. So I would challenge our listeners, first of all, here's something practical you can take away and use later today. The person or situation that you are frustrated with, I'd like you to, when you're able to, zoom out, because a lot of the times the reason that we're so obsessed or anxious or stressed is because the issue is right here. Yeah. We can't see anything else because the issue is all encompassing. We're immersed in it. I would encourage you to zoom out and look at your expectations. What did I truly expect this person to do or say? And then once you look at those expectations, two really big questions. Did I communicate those expectations? Were they even aware that I had these? Because it's not really fair for me to be upset at someone when they didn't know what expectations I have of them. And number two, are those expectations even realistic?
Right.
And my wife and I have this conversation all the time. She brings this up more than I do. She'll be speaking with ladies and she'll say, it's not fair for me to expect my husband to read my mind and get me a bowl of ice cream just because I want it. That's an unrealistic expectation. So I don't have the right to be mad at him or upset or frustrated at him because my expectation was unfair. So in relationships, that's a really big deal that you should consider. If you're frustrated at someone or something, look at your expectations as much as you can.
Yeah.
So let's go back to win-win though. I want to talk about it specifically with entrepreneurs, because a lot of people say, well, I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm going to shut my brain off. You shouldn't, because even employees who have a job currently should have a bit of entrepreneurship mindset inside of them, of a business owner, of I want to make this mine. I want to do the best I can. And we only do the best we can when we take some ownership. So let's talk to the entrepreneur for a moment. I speak with a lot of entrepreneurs. I think of a situation that I had maybe a couple years ago. I think it was around the time of COVID and the pandemic. And I was around a table with 6 different entrepreneurs, and everybody did something drastically different. One was a business owner that owned hair products. Mm-hmm. One made popcorn, delicious popcorn. One was in one was in a coach of entrepreneurs, really cool. But everybody was a different thing. As I listened to everyone going around the table, it's almost like everyone had this pre-built mentality of I need to convince you that my thing is better than yours.
Yeah.
And we have this competition thing, right? If I had the competition mindset, why would I be on a call with Billy G?
Right.
He's been a professional coach longer than I've been. And why would he want to bring me on? I've had coaching experience longer than I've got more gray hair than he does. So why do we do this? First of all, we got to zoom out and look. Here's the first question. If you're trying to figure out a relationship between two people of business or a business relationship, am I truly in competition with this other person?
Right.
Truly. Yes, Billy G and I are both professional life coaches. Guess what? There's 300 million people in America and several billion in the world. I'm pretty sure there's enough out there for us both to have a very fulfilled and satisfied life.
Right.
We're not in true competition with each other. Now, if we're both selling toilet paper in Birmingham, Alabama, then yes, maybe there's a competition aspect. But if one person's selling popcorn and one person is selling hair products, I bet you there's a way for a win-win scenario where they can bring their marketing together, where they can do an event where both people are speaking and they can get a true win-win. How can you, Stephen Covey says win-win or no deal. There will be a time in business where you need to walk away from the table because there's too much of a feeling of competition when it comes to something like this. Right. So I would really encourage you in your relationships, in your business relationships, in your personal relationships, make sure that you're not sponsoring an atmosphere of competition where it's not really needed. I actually had a woman look at me one time and say, Chris, somebody always loses in a relationship. And I thought, you've really been damaged by a lot of people. Like somebody who thinks that you have to lose, that there has to be a loser in a relationship, has been truly hurt and damaged in their life. And I don't blame her for that mindset. It's simply the idea of, unfortunately, she hasn't seen win-win modeled enough.
Yeah.
Our kids don't even see it modeled, right? Our kids, guess what, need to learn how to lose in a competitive environment.
Right. Yeah.
Let me jump on a soapbox for a short period of time.
Yeah.
I respect parents who want to take care of their kids, but children need to be allowed to fail in a safe environment in the home so they can learn how to lose in the world. You will not be able to helicopter over your kids for the rest of their lives and protect them. Eventually, they're going to live their own lives, and it's your responsibility as a parent to train them to handle the rest of life. Let's go back to the education system for a minute, Billy, because this is a soapbox for both of us.
Yeah.
The education system is supposed to be teaching us to be healthy adults. It's supposed to be the purpose. It's supposed to be the purpose of parenting, to create healthy adults, not happy kids, healthy adults.
Right.
So let's all consider where we're at in life. If you're an entrepreneur, guess what? Win-win. What's the win for both parties? Right. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I see the attitude way too much where people fear, like you were talking about, fear being taken advantage of so much, that there's not truly an aspect of how can we both get out of this.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's something we can really consider.
Yeah.
I'd love to, unless you have something else, I'd love to throw this over to you. I'd love you to talk a little bit more about what you were speaking about a few minutes ago with a holistic learning,
Yeah.
because you and I are modeling this right now, right? We're actually talking through the physical body. We're talking through the mental life, and we're talking through the spiritual life. I've actually seen people who are so focused on their spiritual lives that they forget to guard their mind.
Right.
So their relationship with God is wonderful, but they live in fear and stress and anxiety.
Yep. Right.
So there's still an aspect of all of that. And you and I are literally walking people through, hey, win-win scenario. It's going to help your relationships. It's going to help your mental state. It's going to help your spiritual state, not to live in fear.
Yep.
I'd love you to talk a little bit more about that idea of the holistic trifecta. And maybe if you just want to end it or kind of guide the conversation wherever you want after that. But specifically, I'd love you to do this. I'd love you to talk about that holistic idea when it comes to relationships.
Yeah, of course.
Because I kind of feel like the relationship aspect has been our whole talk today, about a win-win, about people getting along with each other, about entrepreneurs. When you're coaching someone, how do you really help them? And this is a generic question. You feel free to go where you want to on it. When it comes to that holistic trifecta that you were talking about, where are people hurting the most that you're currently seeing today? And what's a principle or two you really would like to throw out there when it comes to getting along with people in a more holistic way? That's a very generic question, but I'd like you to just kind of take it wherever you want to take it.
Of course.
As we kind of finish up.
And I can hit all those points. And I'll say this, where people are hurting the most today, it applies to a relationship standpoint. It applies to every single standpoint, but it's stress. And people are more stressed now than ever. And I see that in friends. I see that in clients. I see that in family. I see that with strangers I come across on the street, where everyone is so consumed by outside stimulus, you can say, of how their day is going, of how their checklist is going, of how their to-do list is going for the day. They're so consumed by stress that they can't give the proper attention to relationships, to themselves, to their body, to their mind, to whatever it is. So what is hurting people the most today, now than ever, that I see in so many standpoints, is no one understands anymore how to handle stress, and how we're meant to handle stress is giving time back to ourselves. And the amount of times I've had to tell numerous clients, and it's a learning curve for sure, you got to give yourself time during the week. And I said this I have a 20-year-old client, phenomenal kid. He's made massive progress over the last 2 months of working together. And you can see he went from depression to really understanding, wow, my perspective is everything. My thoughts are everything. I can control how my life goes by this. But again, he didn't learn that in school. You have to go through the trenches in life to see that you have so much power.
Yep.
But even just yesterday in our session, he's coming to me because, oh my goodness, I get it. I'm starting to see the shift, and I still have bad days, but it's no longer me trying to have a good day throughout the week. I'm just trying to have a good moment. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, that's it right there. That's it right there. And that's a 20-year-old kid that's never learned this before, that is adapting to it and moving in life. That's a changed life. Because what our goal is as coaches is to teach you habits, to teach you traits, to teach you areas that are consistently going to build you up, not just, hey, a one-off. And if stress is consuming so much of us nowadays more than ever, if you're not giving yourself your time, or you live truthfully, I think society, I'm 30. My entire life, society has taught us that you work Monday through Friday, and then you have your weekends off where you can enjoy yourself. And I understand it. That's what we were raised on. People have been raised on that for generations now, more than ever. But if you think about it, and this is what pops up with so many clients, if your only time you're allowing yourself is a few hours on a weekend, because grocery shopping comes into play, because church comes into play, because family time comes into play, and your specific time for yourself is now gone from however many hours are in a week to this little tiny period. And very often than not, you could plan for that period, but it doesn't happen. And I tell everyone, you need to pour back into yourself on a daily basis. I don't care if that's 5 minutes. I don't care if that's 10 minutes, but you got to give yourself time to self-improve. And that could be something as simple as sitting on the couch and relaxing. But if we're going to allow stress to consume every area of our life, we then are taking that time where we're putting ourselves first, which at the end of the day, there's only one you and you only have one life. And if you're going to put that one life on the back burner, what's the point? Because you got to be able to provide for yourself. The best thing you can do is say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I got that meeting in an hour. I'm going to give myself this hour to myself. I'm going to give myself this next 15-minute window to me. When you do that on a holistic level, as you mentioned, Chris, your mind, your brain starts to decompress. You're no longer living your thoughts, your mental level at such a high, gotta do it, gotta go. We live on a go mentality too long. You get burnt out very quick. And people need to understand, okay, how do I stop the burnout? When was the last time you gave yourself time? Well, I couldn't. I worked late last night. I was answering emails till 8 o'clock at night, everything like this. My own example, when I wake up at 4 a.m. every day to go to the gym, and I'm in there for 2 hours or so, whatever it is. I get to the gym and I'm there for those 2 hour windows. That's 5 a.m. to about 7:30 a.m. The amount of people that are answering emails on their phone at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I don't touch my phone other than change the music or to check my workout and what I have to do next. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, if you wake up at 5 a.m. and you're already consumed by your emails and consumed by work, where was your time? And so we need, as people, to take back our life. How do you take back your life? By putting yourself first for once, and watch how good it feels. And if it feels good, something's telling you, hey, I should do this a little bit more. But that connects it all together to the trifecta of our mind, our body, and our soul aspect, where we need to give focus to every single one of these areas. And Chris, you mentioned something earlier where in a relationship standpoint, people are trying to get something out of it and trying to compete and trying to be better than another person. And that's where the win-win turns into a win-lose situation, to connect all this together for people. If you're going into a situation, I think the example you gave, Chris, was entrepreneurs sitting around a table and this competitive aspect where people are trying to be the one-upper. I used to work with a 7-year-old kid that would try and one up everything. Like, oh, hey, what'd you do this weekend? Oh, I did this soccer game. I'm like, oh, hey, cool. Good for you. I was watching TV over here. Well, I watched all these shows. I'm like, cool, man. Like, that's awesome. That's a 7-year-old mentality where a one-upper is completely normal, and by all means, let it happen. That's where a parent needs to step in and start to adjust that. But for a kid, completely normal. As adults, we never grew out of that kid-like mentality. And I think you need to have childlike faith in everything. There's a difference between a kid-like mentality and childlike faith. But if you're going to operate as your old belief system used to be of, I need to one-up everyone, I need to make sure I'm the best, I hope you're the best in your field. But your field is you. And if you're going to allow everything else to then get in your head and stress you out, to make you think that there isn't enough to go around, you're now living out of a lack mentality. And if you're living out of a lack mentality, there will never be enough to go around. But if you take that step back, as Chris said, let me just zoom out, I believe your words were, you start to realize that the world we live in, the universe that was created for us, is absolutely abundant. And Chris, I give you this example years ago, but if I sat there and asked someone, hey, go to the beach and tell me how many pebbles of sand are on the beach, you can't put a number on that. It's abundant. Okay. How many cups of water are in the ocean? Abundant. Okay. How many blades of grass are on someone's lawn listening to this right now? You can't put a number on this. So if you start to take a step back and look at it at a world view and even a universal view, abundance is all around us, which means when you start to operate from a very positive outlook on your relationships, on your business, on your self-improvement, on your mind, body, and soul, and realize that there is more than enough to go around, you grow out of lack and you realize, I don't have to compete with so-and-so because there's more than enough to go around. You mentioned there's 300 million people in the United States. There's over, I believe at this point, it's at 8 billion people in the world. Okay, from a coaching standpoint, more power to you. I hope the clients find you more than ever, right? Exactly. Right. Because there's more than enough to go around. That creates a successful business standpoint.
And a successful relationship.
And that's how I was just going to connect it. That creates a successful relationship standpoint. Beautiful. And on a relationship standpoint, when you're leading with abundance, You're living at this higher energetic level, this higher mindset, this higher spiritual level, you can say. You're leading from a higher emotion, aka your energy emotion of love. That is the top emotion we can feel. When you're leading with love, or even positivity, for lack, if you don't want to use the term love, because some people are like, oh, love means two things. No, love is the best thing you can feel. It heals everything. It grows everything. It's abundant. So if you're leading from a higher level energy, what you're doing in a very deep spiritual mindset perspective, thanks to the law of attraction, all these other areas, you're sending out a frequency, bring more in, because there's more than enough to go around. Your belief that you had when you were a young kid, where you needed to beat everyone else, is now healed to the sense that, oh, wait a second, I just had to grow myself. And if I grow myself, if I start to take action steps to grow myself, that's changing who I am, life change, to the point where life starts to change towards me. So it gets better with every single step that you take. That's living life on your own terms. That's creating life on your own terms. But that on a relationship standpoint, that on a business standpoint, that on an entrepreneurship, that on a self-improvement level, at its core is what we're doing. If you're leading with a lack mentality, believe me, there will never be enough to go around. You're going to have to keep getting more and more and more. But what you're losing is your peace and your happiness, because you're now thinking, oh my goodness, I have to keep doing this. There's never enough. That's fear. But if you lead from abundance and realize, oh my goodness, there's more than enough to go around. I love being a coach. I love being a speaker. I love helping people. Helping people is the name of the game. You're now, just in saying that, taking steps of action with your words. Your thoughts are going to follow those words, right? And then if your actions are following those thoughts and words, get ready, because you're actively changing your life. But I know I just connected all those different points together.
No, that's great. Well, and I love how I just wrote down the lack mentality also creates a spirit of competition between people. Right? Because if I'm operating out of a lack mentality where there's not enough for everybody, well, of course, I have to compete with you. Because I'm operating out of my own lack mentality. So that creates a win-lose. Yeah. And I can never truly have a win-win, because there's not enough for both of us. Yep. There's only enough for me.
Exactly.
That's pretty huge.
And society teaches us that. We're supposed to, we're being taught, we're teaching our kids nowadays more than ever, lack. And it's not, I'll say this, from a parental standpoint, you're doing the best you can. I sit there, and my parents, they did their best they could ever do for my brother and myself growing up. Yep. As a kid, you're taking in information from everywhere. So if there's ever a fight on money between two parents, the kids are watching. What that teaches a kid, as an outside person looking in, is that, oh, there's not enough. I need to cut back. I need to keep putting in work like they're putting in work to try and have more when I'm older. And as you get older, and I see this in clients right now, trying to heal that lack mentality, it can be as quick as possible, or it takes people so long because they don't allow themselves to see a greater perspective. But to heal a limiting belief that is, you need to have a more empowering belief step in. But you create that empowering belief when you write it down, you start to repeat it to yourself until the mind takes it.
It's huge, man. It's huge. Well, if you're good, if I kind of finish up with a couple closing thoughts, and then I'll toss it over to you.
Yeah, no, by all means. I was gonna ask you, what's one last
of course
I'll leave with people, and then where can they find you? But by all means, you take it and you run with that.
For sure, man. I love the way that we work together. We work together in a true win-win scenario, and I really appreciate what you do and the services you offer. So the term that Stephen Covey would call everything that Billy was just talking about is the seventh principle he talks about is sharpen the saw. He said, because when it really comes down to it, you run yourself ragged. You don't allow yourself to rest. You don't focus on personal improvement. Abraham Lincoln has one of my favorite quotes of all time. He said, if you give me 6 hours to cut down a tree, I'm going to spend the first 4 hours sharpening my axe. Awesome. So many of us out there trying to cut down trees. We're trying to work our job. We're trying to do our marriages with dull axes because we're not rested. And there's some people that say, well, I rest a lot. I binge watch 6 hours of Netflix. That's not sharpening the saw. Exactly. That's sitting here spinning your axe in your hand because it's not actually doing what it's meant to do. Sharpening the saw is truly about you becoming the best version of yourself. Yeah. It's about giving yourself the rest that's required, not that's wanted, It's about you reading. It's about you listening. It's about you. When's the last time you learned something new?
Right.
When's the last time you learned a new hobby? Like you growing is what Billy was talking about. So I love that. I kind of want to end with what, in my opinion, is one of the most important, I'm going to call it the most important principle that I teach. I had a young man, because it goes with all this. It goes all the way. I love your trifecta. I love the idea that you talk about. And from a spiritual aspect, I had a young man that I teach, and I tell people all the time, I am a Christian, heterosexual male. It's just my identity, if you want to call it that. It's who I am. So I tell my clients, I'm not going to preach at you in our sessions, but you also need to be aware of who I am and where my mentalities come from. I have a client, a young man, who was not raised in a religious atmosphere at all. So he's not spiritual, as he talks about. And I helped him I kind of walked him through a standpoint, because he really struggles with self-esteem, and he allows the circumstances of the moment to get to him really, really in a major way. And I said, does it make sense to you how, for me, because I believe that I was created by a God who has a purpose and a reason for me. He has an identity for me. In the Bible, he calls me chosen, holy, royal, and special. I call those the 4 words of my identity, because for me, anything that's against that identity is a lie. I'm chosen, I'm holy, I'm royal, I'm special, according to what the Bible says. So, and I asked him, I said, does it make sense that circumstances don't have to get to me so much because they don't affect my identity? My identity was created by the one who created me. So therefore, if I didn't have an idea of an identity, then all of a sudden the circumstances of the moment define me. The emotions I feel in the moment define me. I said, but does it make sense from my side? I'm already identified.
Right.
I already have a definition of the person that I am. So if the circumstance disagrees, what wins? My identity wins.
Yeah.
So I don't have to allow the thing, the moment, the relationship to really hit me deep, because it doesn't affect who I am.
Yeah.
So what I would really challenge our listeners is, I'm not going to sit here and preach at you either, but I will simply ask you a question. Why do you believe what you believe?
Right.
When's the last time you considered that question? Well, I don't believe in blah, blah, blah. Why? According to who? You didn't you didn't come out of the womb and go, here's my belief system about the supernatural.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. You were taught the way that you think currently. Where did it come from? And the second question I'd ask, how's that working for you?
Yeah.
Because there's a Bible verse that says this: don't be anxious for nothing, but in prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. Then the peace of God that transcends all understanding will guard your heart and minds in Christ Jesus. The people who know what they believe are going to be the people that have the most peace.
Yeah.
If you're struggling with your belief system, if Billy's trifecta, you say, well, I'm not a real spiritual person. You realize if you have a 3-legged stool and one of those legs is completely missing, you will never have stability. You will never have peace. So when it comes to a spiritual level, in my humble opinion, if you don't have that one stool piece set up, you're going to crumble. And all 3 are vital. You were created with all 3, and you need to focus on all 3. But I feel like the spiritual aspect is one that's taboo in our culture today. And I'm just trying to bring it back a little bit.
Yeah, I love it.
Because people struggle so much with a lack of identity, and they feel like everything around them identifies them. It's like, no. Your identity, if you can figure out that my identity was already set in place before I was even born, then you don't have to let anything in life affect you as deep as you're currently doing.
Right.
So I just wanted to throw that out there as kind of my final thing, because I'd like everybody to challenge their own belief system on that.
Yeah.
Why do you believe what you believe, and how's the results working for you? And get with the coach.
Yeah.
Get with the personal coach, work through some things, focus on those win-win relationships. And Billy, last time, man, I really appreciate the opportunity of being in your show. And more than anything else, I appreciate who you are as a person, because you genuinely want to help people. And anybody who's out there, if you want, make sure that you subscribe to Billy's channel. If you want to get in contact with me, I almost forgot that part. Yeah. My website's currently being worked on, but it's bloodflowcoaching.com. My email address is bloodflow.coaching@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out. If you're looking for coaching, either one of us would be fine. Abundance mentality, there's plenty out there for both. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, find a person that can help guide you, give you individual help for your particular circumstance. And they're going to focus on a win-win relationship. So appreciate you.
100%. No, I appreciate you being here, Chris. And you bring so many key insights, key points, key knowledge that I need myself, but I know viewers and listeners need that just as much. So I appreciate your time today. And I appreciate you telling our viewers where they can find you. Because, guys, I'm telling you, Chris brings so much. I can use the word knowledge, but I'm just going to call it what it is. It's wisdom. You know, you have the experience behind it, and now you're reaching out that hand to help people. And so if there's a viewer or listener that is trying to find someone that might be the good fit, if there is anything that Chris or myself said during this interview, by all means, reach out and let's talk about it. There is no harm that can come from you taking a step to learn and better yourself in that one call. And that's the beauty of it. Chris, I don't know how you do it. And, but when I do a call with someone, I'm guaranteeing you're the same. When there's a strategy session, as I always put out there in my videos, where you can set up a call with me, go on my calendar, and we're going to talk for a half hour, however long it goes. And our entire goal as coaches is to provide you with value. If you don't sign on after that, hey, I hope what I said gets you to where you need to be.
It's good to meet you.
Right? Exactly. But you're going to gain something from that call. So reach out to Chris, reach out to myself. If something we said sparks you in such a way and you want to better yourself and achieve a higher level of results for yourself, it's on the table. It is now your goal to take that step, to reach out your hand and grab it. So go for it. But Chris, I thank you so much for being here. By all means, guys, we're going to have his link. We're going to have his email in the credits so you can find it. You can go right to it after. It's going to be in the YouTube description. But if you have not yet, please like this message below and hit that thumbs up button. Share this message to someone who you feel needs to hear it. Someone that could be sparked by one of the key points Chris and I talked about that can help them move forward, or even yourself. By all means, share it around if this impacted you in such a way. And please subscribe if you haven't already. We've broken 4,000 subscribers, which is huge. I'm loving that. But that means that every single subscriber that comes through is someone else that we've helped. By all means, hit that subscribe button, because every single Sunday we're coming at you with a new message to help you in such a new way, to help you move forward in life, to help you out of the dark and into your own version of whatever that light might be for you, to help empower you. By all means, guys, subscribe. And like I said, I thank you so much for being here. And Chris, I thank you for being here once again. I love our messages.
Appreciate you, man.
Perfect. Have a good one, guys.
I've been around and doing it, but now it's my time to shine and start proving it. I'm losing it, I'm moving it. The city is where I'm made, Bostonian flow, I kick it back there. Yeah, I got game, got in a fan way. We the city of the champs, every sport we play. Spit wetter than the harbor, yeah, I'm flowing like the Charles. I be speeding on